G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Dr. Michael Filosi from Fullarton Park Dental. Fullarton Park Dental, based in Adelaide, Australia. Thanks for your time today, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. I'm an avid fan of John Warrillow's Built to Sell Radio podcast, and you were on there about a month ago, episode 527, and I was really impressed with your story. And obviously, you exited your business, which we'll talk about near the end. That's why you're on John's podcast. We had him on our podcast a couple of times, and I think what he does with his content around exiting is just really good for business owners.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing it, and I appreciate you reaching out. So looking forward to having this chat with you.
Yeah, I stalked you on LinkedIn, and that's how we got in touch, and I got you on the cast.
Indeed.
Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Sure. So I'm a dentist by profession, fix teeth and the oral condition and mouth, see patients, and it's a fee for service. So you provide the service. I started off as a dentist when I bought as an employee dentist, and then I bought a practice. It was a very small practice. It had 2 dental chairs, so 2 rooms to work out of. And over time, we grew. So by the time I sold 10 years later, we ended up having 10 dental chairs, 30 total or 30-ish plus staff, which would have been full-time equivalent, would have been sort of low 20s, I guess, low to mid 20s, depending on the day, probably low 20s actually, but yeah, somewhere in that vicinity anyway. But yeah, so we grew from a 2-chair practice to a 10-chair practice. And I went from being what they call a wet finger dentist, so seeing patients in my own right. And then I transitioned to being a true business owner and not seeing patients and just running the business.
Yep. Fantastic. And that's what I really enjoyed about your journey and story with John is, I guess it'd be quite uncommon for people on the tools like dentists, etc., to get off the tools and actually become the genuine business owner, as Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth, the entrepreneur, not the technician. So that I thought that was really well done.
Cool. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. A lot of dentists, I think, want to do it, to be honest. And you're exactly right. It's a very uncommon thing. I think if you're working on the central service that your business provides, the question is, are you a true business owner or have you got a high-paying job, basically? And I think that dentist is the classic example of that. You can own a business, so to speak, and have an ABN and things. But if you're the main man and if you don't work, then you're not earning any income or no revenue coming through, then you've effectively got yourself a high-paying job as opposed to a true business. So my challenge was to move from the former to the latter, and that's what I was able to do with time, quite successfully.
And John did ask this question, but for our audience, how did you go around that risk of getting dentists into the clinic and then them not jumping out onto their own?
Yeah, look, it's with a plan, I'd say, is the central thing. So none of these things, I'm very meticulous by nature. Like I talk about, my spirit animal is a boa constrictor. So I take the risk, I squeeze as much life out of it as I can, and then I'll go into it when I've gotten rid of as much risk as possible. So all these things take time, but basically I went from working 4 clinical days a week to 3, then to 2, and then to 0 over the period of a few years. And we would bring on board dentists, and we positioned ourselves as being the best dental practice to work at. Basically, we provided a lot of mentoring and support for our team so that new graduate and recent graduate dentists who are very willing to learn and grow with us and were very malleable in a positive sense were wanting a job working with us. So that's how we positioned ourselves as being, instead of being somewhere where you sit in your box and away you go and work, we wanted to position ourselves as being somewhere where you can genuinely learn, grow, and get your flying hours up, I suppose, seeing patients.
Yeah, great. And how did you start out? Maybe take us right back.
As a dentist or as a business owner, sorry?
Well, obviously education first and then you work.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I went through Adelaide University and got a dental degree. So that's 5 years. I went through with my then girlfriend, now wife. I worked for someone else for 10 years for different people as a dentist. And I was kind of trying to figure out whether business ownership is for me, I suppose. And I kind of think, I didn't think I would. And I was kind of quite scared, to be honest, of making the leap. I went off and did a business course and started doing an MBA. And I thought, oh, look, I'll learn everything there is to know about business. And then I'll jump in and I'll know it perfectly. And of course, that's rubbish, right? Like, that's not how it works. You've got to dip your toe and you're going to lose a bit of skin along the way. I started this idea of buying my own practice and my own business was one that interested me. I caught up for a coffee with someone who I don't normally catch up with, who had just started out on his own. And I said to him, look, do you know of any for sale? And he said, oh, look, I think there's one on Fullarton Road. It's pretty run down, but I think that's for sale. And I literally went from that coffee, drove straight there afterwards, knocked on the door and said, hi, I'm Michael. I hear there's the possibility of buying in. And away it went from there. So yeah, didn't wait for the grass to go under my feet. Quite literally drove straight there, knocked on the door, introduced myself, left my details, met the principal dentist who I ended up working with and buying from, and went from there.
Right. And was it 2015 you bought the business?
Correct.
Yep. And how old were you then?
Good question. What I've been 31.
31. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Sure. So we started out, I guess, dental terms, we had 2 operatories or 2 chairs to work out of, and then we finished off with 10. Okay. So we've grown quite significantly. We literally, when I bought it, was a practice that nobody else wanted. And by the time we sold, we were the biggest and, in my opinion, best in Adelaide. And we did that in 10 years. So we kind of went from worst to first. In terms of key figures, so we had low 30s staff in total, which would have been, I think it would have hovered around the low 20s full-time equivalent, somewhere in that vicinity. Over time, I crunched the numbers in advance of this last night. So our revenue compounded at 18% per year on year over the course of 10 years. Not every year it wasn't always bang on 18%. Sometimes it was higher, sometimes it was lower. But if you take our starting point, when I arrived there, and our endpoint 10 years later, you times it by 1.18 or at 18% compounding for 10 years, that's where we got to.
That's fantastic. How many full-time equivalents did you start with when you only had the 2 chairs?
4 or 5, yep. 4 probably. Yeah. Yep. 4 or 5, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
When was the moment?
So we had...
There you go.
Oh, sorry. So I remember the first, just terms that are very relatable. The first Christmas party we had when I got there was around the gentleman who I bought him with. It was around his dinner table, right? They were just sitting around there. Yep. By the time I finished, I remember I walked in, we had it at a venue, and there were 2 massive tables of people. And I went, wow, that's a lot of people. And then I actually realized there was a third one with our team on it as well. So we had 3 big, long tables full of people. So remembering back to what it was like when I got there, and we're just sitting around his round kitchen table, and then all of a sudden going, holy heck, there are a lot of people here. Yeah, it was quite a change.
Fantastic. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Look, it's a really good question, and I was trying to ponder that. Look, I don't mean it in the sense of being pompous, but I always thought I was winning. Like, I always thought from the moment I got there, I fell in love with it, and I could see the work I needed doing, and I was constantly pushing forward. So I think you've got to fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve. And I was very much in love with the idea of, how do we take this practice, which has good bones, and do it at scale? So how do we have a big dental practice, but with a small practice feel? So I fell in love with that idea, fell in love with that problem. And I always kind of felt like I was winning, I suppose. I always felt like it was not without its challenges, to be clear. And I hope we touch on that. But it always felt like, just through sheer force of will, that we were moving in the right direction and we're on track.
And what does success look like to you?
Yeah, look, I read something last night, actually, funnily enough, which probably, like, I was thinking about the question again, and there's this saying about, or to take the opposite, like the idea of hell is that when you're on your deathbed, the person you are meets the person you could have become. And I think, like, that's when you're like, I failed, right? So I suppose then the idea of what a success look like to me is the fact that trying to get as close to the best person I can be as possible, right? So if you think about that, not across multiple disciplines, so business, fitness, as a parent, as a husband, as a friend, it's like, what does the best version of me look like? So I suppose for me, success in a very broad ranging thing is to feel like the person I am is as close, I'm edging towards or getting close to the best version of myself in each of those capacities. You're never going to quite reach it. So that's in a broad brush approach. I think in a different approach is in terms of how you spend your time. I think I like what Morgan Housel talks about, which is success is being able to do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want, with who you want. If you have control over your time, that to me is a significant success.
Yep. And number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business? I mean, 18% compound over 10 years is phenomenal growth.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. Look at, and one of the key things is here, I'd say, is to recognize your business and the nature of the business as well. So for us, dentistry is a mature business. Okay. So if you're in tech and you have a code or a program that no one else has, there's a whole lot of stuff you can do badly if you're the only one who offers it right. Whereas I was much more interested in mature industries and mature businesses and how do they succeed. So we've got a very popular bakery at the end of my street. It's pretty hard to invent a new sausage roll or a new pie or pasty. It's a mature industry. I was keen to chat to him. Hey, how did you scale this thing? Like baking goods has been around for centuries. So for me, dentistry is the same, right? It's very hard. We've all got the same tools. So in terms of best thing that we did was Google reviews, right? So we very quickly pushed as hard as we could, as fast as we could to get more than anyone else in Adelaide. So when I finished off, we had 409, I think it was, 5-star Google reviews at an average of 5.0 as well, which was exceptional. Yeah, like we pushed really hard at that. And that to me, it's the whole, it used to be word of mouth, then it became word of thumb. People would scroll and look at that. So I think I was fortunate that funnily enough, in your hometown, I was Hobart on our baby moon, and I was reading a book and it talked about Google reviews, social proof, and something just clicked in my head of like, that was 10 years ago. This is where it's at. This is what we've got to do. It started off with heartache. The first review we ever had was 1 star, and it's from someone who'd never visited the practice. They just had something in the mail from us via registered mail, and they just took offense at that. So, and it breaks your heart because you're busting your gut to work hard at your business. And you're like, this person can just take a knife to it like that, and that's all people see. So I very quickly worked hard at figuring out this is where it's going to be. This is what people are looking at. And I wanted to kill it off as a competition. I wanted to get as many as I could as fast as I could, so no one else was trying to compete on that grounds.
Yep. Great. Reviews in this day and age, particularly, it's just so powerful in marketing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you fund the business?
So it was self-funded / bank loans. So I never sought, so I always owned the whole business, the entire thing. And that's the way I wanted it. My dad used to say, the only ship that sinks is a partnership. So I was pretty keen to go it alone. So absolutely had to borrow money from the bank and invest in my own capital. But yeah, it was either my own funds or loans from the banks that I was the personal guarantor for. So it was up to me to make it work. But I never took outside investment. I didn't want to dilute the pie. I didn't want someone else owning a fraction of the business. And then basically I was working my guts out and they've got equity in it. And then by the time you're done, yeah, okay, they say, but if you make the pie big, then you'd rather a small slice than but for me, there's a hard limit on how big a dental practice can grow. And I'd rather have the whole pie and make it as big as possible. I'm greedy. I'd rather have the whole lot. So for me, yep, I wanted to back myself. We bought the building as well that the practice was located on. So for us, that was really important. And the one next door, and turn that into a car park. So dental practices, unlike a lot of businesses, are very difficult to move. There's an enormous amount of plumbing and infrastructure in there. You need lead in the walls to stop the x-rays. All the underfloor plumbing has to have plumbed for dental chairs. So I didn't want to lease from someone and have them say, you're out, or be able to dictate the rent. So I very quickly figured out I wanted to buy the building. We ended up buying the one next door as well. So that we could grow the business and have physical space to grow into.
Never heard that before, but I'm certainly going to use it now. The only ship that sinks is a partnership. I think that's hilarious, particularly someone that's had over 30 different business partners, myself. Yes, I've seen pretty much all the shit that can go wrong. Yeah.
100%. Like, and there are some exceptions that do work. I get it, but I think you've got to know yourself too. And I knew myself well enough to know what works, what doesn't. And I wanted to live and die by my own sword. I kind of thought, it's just one less thing. If I don't have to negotiate with someone about decisions, about stuff, I've worked in practices that were jointly owned. And it was really hard because you're serving two masters as well, or they can't agree on things, or there's a lack of direction. So it just removed, to me, it's a risk like anything. And I thought the faster I can be it's just one less thing to worry about, basically. So I was quite content. Some people prefer to have a business partner to bounce ideas off and all those things. And I'm very consultative. I like having clever people that I worked with, and you reward them. But I wanted ownership, right? Yeah. I think there's a really good book, Felix Dennis, How to Get Rich. It's a brilliant one. And one of his key things is, don't give up the pie. Like retain as much of that pie as you can. Don't give up ownership. And that was really critical for me, that I never seriously contemplated having someone else buy in. It was always, I just didn't want to have to negotiate with someone. I wanted to know that I was going to forge the path forward. And if it was successful, it was up to me. And if I wasn't, I can deal with that too. But I didn't want the extra layer of having to figure something out with someone else. Some people it works for, but for me, I was really clear, no, thank you.
If you were a startup today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
No, no, I wouldn't. I think that dentistry is a different market. So basically 30, 40 years ago, the first thing is with a dental degree, you learn zero about business, not a thing, nothing, no marketing, nothing at all, no accounting. There is literally zero. All you learn about is the human body and teeth, and that is it. Okay. Now, 30, 40 years ago, that you could make a lot of money as a dentist and have a dental practice without knowing any of those things. Those times have changed, right? It is a lot more competitive. A lot of the fat has gone out of it. So you need to be good at business to do well as a dentist or work for someone. But I wouldn't go back into the market now. No, I have a few sort of issues about how dental treatment is more broadly like where the market's at and over servicing and those sorts of things. But I feel for me personally, I feel like I've climbed that Everest. It's not something that I'm in a rush to go back to. I don't want to kind of have very little desire to do it all over again. Are there other mountains to climb? Well, I might find some, but I wouldn't. If I had a mountain of funding and they said, look, can you do it and go it again? I just don't have the inclination to do it. And I've got arguments as to why I don't think it's a great investment as well.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Sure. Staff and losing control. Okay. Yep. So there was a period where last year, I suppose, where we had some rogue team members and some of them were quite senior team members too. And that was extraordinarily challenging because you feel like you are wrestling with a beast. And like the saying goes, you don't stop wrestling with the bear when you're tired. You stop wrestling when the bear's tired. And the bear kept fighting and it was hard work. And at one point I thought, am I going to lose the lot here? And I don't think I was actually going to, but when you've got senior people who are then misrepresenting you to the rest of the team and they're starting to question you, that was a significant challenge. So it was something I talked about on John's podcast, but losing a lot of sleep, dry retching into the toilet in the mornings, trying to figure out like, how am I going to get out of this? Like I feel like I'm losing control here of this thing that's my business. I went into business because I wanted the control. I wanted to know the buck's going to stop with me. I'm going to live and die by my own sword. And when you feel like you lose that control, it's a sense of like, well, hang on a tick. I can do everything right here and still not have it pay off. And that doesn't make sense. So I think, the challenges with staff are enormous and having everyone, particularly in a tight labor market as well, when everyone's looking for the bigger, better deal, having everyone on track and singing from the same hymn sheet and not arguing with each other is an enormous challenge. And if you have people in there who are saying less than complimentary things about you, it spreads like it can be quite devastating. And I think as business owners, you take things personally. I know I do, right? So when these things are happening, it affects you deeply, like deeply and profoundly. And it's deeply and profoundly hurtful. So that was a significant challenge for me that was really tough to go through.
Yep. It's one of my top 3 beliefs that people are the hardest thing in small business and its greatest asset.
Yep, 100%. I agree with both of those. Yeah.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value? Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
I think all areas of business benefit the more time you spend on it, right? So it's like a muscle at the gym. The more time you spend flexing, like working on that muscle, the bigger it'll grow. I think for me, I think I ended up becoming a good leader of people, but it wasn't natural at all. I was never the school captain or a prefect or someone who was the captain of the sports team. So I think initially in my career, as I would have expectations of people, and I'm a bit like Vegemite, that I'm a very strong taste and everyone likes Vegemite. So the people who do like Vegemite love it, but the people who don't can't stand it. And I'm a little bit like that, I suppose. And that was a real challenge for me until I figured out like my job is to find the people who like Vegemite, not so much to worry about the ones who don't. So I think managing people and people in general would definitely be the thing that I had to work at the most. And I'm quite formulaic in my thinking. So I think I kind of build up robust structures of, I didn't want to be flaky. I wanted to be dependable and straight as an arrow. And I knew that if I did that, then, and I demonstrated the behavior that I wanted in my team, then I could hold them accountable by those same standards. So I'm not a strong person to give a rallying cry to a team and expect them all to be cheering. There's other people I employed who did a better job at that. But I was very clear in my values and I demonstrated that. And then I held people accountable for also demonstrating those as well. So it was very boring, but it was very clear and emphatic. And everyone knew where I stood on things. Everyone knew my expectations of them. There was zero room for doubt. No one's ever said to me, oh, Mike, I didn't quite know what you expected of me. It just didn't happen.
And what have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Look, sometimes you feel like you just got to hold on for the ride, I suppose. Sometimes you make hiring decisions when you don't have enough information, or you just got to add someone with a pulse and a heartbeat, I suppose. And sometimes they work out okay, and other times not. The periods of high growth were good fun. They were good because you're sailing. So the high growth never sort of worried me too much, because you just feel like we are kicking goals here, and you want to fill your boots. You go, long may this last, because you know that it's not going to forever. So I think that the high growth phase was fun, enjoyable, less stressful, because I suppose money and having liquidity and cash flow cures a lot of problems. So yeah, that part was pretty good.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love problem solving, and I love hard, interesting, meaningful problems. I've got it on where is it? I might be up on my top there, but my wife made me a mosaic that says those three words. It says hard, interesting, meaningful. So for me, the problems that I like to solve are those hard, interesting, meaningful problems. It's not hard to find hard problems. There's plenty of those around. Meaningful too, but like interesting is actually the tricky one. So putting a child to sleep, it's hard and it's meaningful, but it's not interesting. No one goes, oh, this is a really fascinating problem here. It's not interesting at all. So for me, running a business and growing a business was intrinsically hard, interesting, and meaningful. It really got my gears flowing. I like board games. I like games of strategy, and growing a business, scaling a business felt like this most amazing test of skill, really, and test of strategy. And I really got off on that. Like, I love that problem solving aspect. My dad was a motor mechanic and a craftsman. He solved problems with his hands. I solved problems with my head. So I like to try and think my way through problems. I like to sit down with a coffee on my own, no phone, pen and paper, and plot out my thoughts. And I'm amazed at how often by the end of it, I've got something to work with. Sit there and just glue my backside to the seat and go, you're not moving until you figure this out. And you just start putting ink on paper. And by the end of it, you go, I think I've got a plan here. So I love the problem solving aspect of it and the game aspect of it, I suppose. So that was the thing I enjoyed the most.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Biggest mindset shift. That you're going to give more than you get, really. And I'm probably still learning that, but I think it's that aspect of, you invest a lot of time and effort in people. And I feel honestly like there are some amazing people. Like you said, you make a really good point that the people are your business's best asset and your hardest thing to manage. And there were some amazing people who absolutely met me where I gave to them, and they gave me just as much back, which is great. And I don't mean in terms of like output. I just mean in terms of that relationship of like, hey, we're both trying really, really hard here to look after each other, and we both have each other's best interests genuinely front of mind. Okay. And that's some of the most nourishing, enjoyable, fulfilling things that can happen. But it's not super common, I guess. I think you've sort of got maybe rough numbers, 1/6 of people are like that. Okay. So 1 in 5, 1 in 6. Then there's some that will never be able to help. And then you've got everyone in between. And I think, the feeling though, of feeling like I invested a lot more in this person than what I got back was a mindset shift I'm still coming to terms with, of like, how do I reconcile that feeling of being let down and disappointment, I suppose. And that's something probably that still lingers, is like, how do I reconcile that? It sounds corny to say, but caring too much, not in the person, but caring in the relationship and about the investment, and going, if I'm putting this much time and effort into helping you, I expect you to meet me there. I don't expect people to be at the business at midnight like I am. I get that. No one's going to be as committed to that as what I am. But in terms of this relationship, my expectation and my hope was that people would meet me there, and it didn't often, or didn't always happen. So that was a big mindset shift, and wrapping my head around that.
And the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
So I'm very big on habits. Like the Aristotle, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit, right? So habits are everything. and identity. And I think that the thing is that habits also, if you want a habit to embed itself, have it become part of your identity. So if you're doing something out of willpower, eventually that willpower is going to fade. All right. If it's part of your identity, it will never fade. So a runner who gets up every morning and run at 5 a.m, they're not doing it because, oh, geez, I better go for a run. They're doing it because they're a runner, and runners get up at 5 a.m and go for a run. It is part of who they are. So I think if you can embed the identity of business owner and what that looks like and what behaviors are supportive of that, that's a really good start. So for me, business ownership, the habit that I embedded was like, I'm going to get out of this what I put in. All right. So I ran a very successful business, but it's a bit like I invested a lot of time and effort and energy into it. Behind me, I'm 6'6", 198 centimeters tall, so very tall. I've read my height in business books 3 years while running a business, while having a family, all those things. With a whole bunch of other ones I've read on my bookcase as well there. But you get out of it what you put in. So the habit was to learn more about it and get better at it, I think. And it's one of those things that it's not a tick and flick exercise. You are constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly trying to get better. So the habit I would embed is to go, I'm going to only be as good at this as the time and effort I invest into it. And it's the whole working on the business, not in the business. So reading those books in and of themselves, it doesn't go, oh, well, how's your business better? Well, it's really hard to put my finger on, but I can guarantee my business is a lot stronger for having read them all.
Yep. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
It's interesting, right? Hiring people is tricky. We actually found, what we ended up doing, a social media presence. We ended up not really marketing to prospective patients quite so much. It ended up actually being a really good vehicle to find people. Okay. So we found a lot of good people via our social media and positioning ourselves as being a really good place to work, showing people with a smile on their face, showing the staff days and events and things that we did, that people who are looking for a position, and then having a landing page on our website for careers or work with us, also segmenting that as well. So within dentistry, you can have dentists, you can have receptionists, you can have dental assistants. And then we also had a section for new graduate dentists as well. Okay. So we segmented that to 4 different sub pages that they could put their details in that would come through to me. So I found that our social media actually ended up being somewhat of a recruitment tool, to be honest. Would look at it and go, my place doesn't do that. That's got really nice rooms. That looks good. So that actually worked quite well. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than Seek, I guess, as well. So and we try and develop a constant pool of applicants that were ready to go. So we'd interview before we're ready to employ someone, and we'd let them know we don't have a position right now, but if we did, would you want to follow this up? And invariably they'd say yes. So then when it was time to hire, we were ready then to call them up, get them back in again, and go from there.
That's great. Very smart. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
So I was of the view that I expect more than the bare minimum from my team, but they ought to expect the return from me. Okay. So I made a point of, when my team needed me to help them, I would jump in, all guns blazing, and do everything I could to help them. So, of course, that helps in a work setting. So there were times, say, when a dentist would be seeing a patient and they'd get stuck with an extraction. I'd be at home. They'd call me up, oh, Michael, call up the boss. It's not much fun, but I'm on my way in. I'd come in, I'd help them out, I'd bail them out. So it was a demonstration to them, I've got your back, I support you. And I didn't make a big deal about it, but it's basically, I wanted them to mirror my behavior. So with other things, if someone needed a reference letter for a rental application or something like that, or try and put someone in touch with a banker I knew to help get a home loan or something, or invariably a couple of the staff, their kids had dental injuries on the weekend. And they're like, oh, is there any chance you can come in? I'd drop everything, come in and help them out. So I very much tried to do more than the bare minimum they could expect from me. So they didn't just think that, rather than just clock on, clock off and do as little as possible, I wanted to demonstrate to them, hey, I'm in this and I want to help you. But then reasonably, if I need them to go above and beyond, I'd expect that back from them as well. And that certainly helped with the culture, is demonstrating that. I think things like, I remember we had some graffiti on one of our walls outside, and it was a stinking hot day, over 40 degrees. And I made a point, I never shirked anything. So I went out there and I scrubbed that jolly wall, and nobody else was, it was too hot for anyone to walk down the street to get a coffee. And I didn't care. I was going to go out there and clean it off as best I could, right? And I can tell the staff in the staff room looking, and I want them to go, hey, if the boss is out there on a 42-degree day trying to remove graffiti, I've got no excuse next time he asks me to take the bin out or something like that, because that guy works his backside off. So I think demonstrating the behaviors that I wanted definitely were a big part of getting the culture that I wanted.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I haven't, poorly, basically. So I'm an obsessive type of guy. I'm an intense type of person. So like balance is not a word. My star sign is Libran, which is the scales, but that's about the full extent of balance in my life. I feel that to be good at something, extraordinary results takes outlier effort and behavior. So I did things that no one else was prepared to do, and I worked enormously hard and spent more time and effort on things well beyond what the normal scope of things are, and that delivers results. So balance has never been something that I've been good at. I think that at some point, part of the reason for selling probably was that the business ends up occupying such a large part of your headspace. There's just room for nothing else. And you kind of just want to pop it and start again, because I've never been someone who's been able to compartmentalize and go, okay, work stops here, something starts there. There were definitely times, and I say this with a degree of, I'm not proud of it and I'm not ashamed of it either, but where I'd put the business before the family, or I'd stick around work later than what I ought to have. And yeah, I was sort of obsessed with this thing called my business. And so yeah, balance is not my strong suit, and taking lessons from me on balance is not advisable.
How much professional development did you invest in yourself?
Sure. So from a dental point of view, initially a fair bit. So I reached a point early where I realized that there was a natural cap on my ability to deliver. My degree of success as a dentist was because I worked so hard at it, as opposed to a natural skill. But in terms of professional development as a business owner, enormous. So I would devour many books, podcasts, like basically every area of my life would dovetail with business. So I didn't have a hobby, unless I didn't read for fun, unless it clearly connected back to the business, then I wouldn't do it basically. So I invested an enormous amount of time getting better at business and continuing professional development, be it podcasts, be it courses, and those sorts of things. And mostly reading, mostly books and conversations. I was involved with the Business Chamber of South Australia, those sorts of things. So invested very heavily.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yes. So I've got a dentist colleague of mine who's been a really strong mentor of mine. He taught me what's called tooth morphology, which is which tooth is which, basically. So back when I was a first year uni student and you get extracted teeth, you got to figure out which one it is. So Dr. Jack Cirillo, so he was a significant mentor of mine, and has been after I graduated. I'd initially pick up the phone and call him and say, what do I do with this? What have I done with that? So he definitely has been a significant mentor of mine, no question. And there's been others, as well, sort of that come into and out of your life, I suppose.
Yeah. And did you have a board of directors or advisors?
No, it's just me. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Michael, you're one of the few who've had on that's actually exited their business. Any advice for our audience around exiting?
100%. Lots of advice. So I think that if you're going to, I went through the sale process, and people say, oh, you must have learned so much from the selling process. And I sold my business. When I put it up, I sent my email to my accountant on June 14th to say, oh, I think I might want to sell. How do I do it? And how do I maximize the value? 81 days later, the business changed hands. So I hadn't at that stage contacted anyone about it. So a business that's good to sell is a business that's good to own. Okay. So I think that invest time in making your business highly sellable, highly profitable. Spend the time getting it so it's ship shape, rather than getting to a point where you want to sell and then going, oh, hang on, now I've got to get it ready for sale. So think about a house. Don't wait until you decide to sell before you get the garden looking nice, before you get you give it a lick of paint. All right. Have it ready to sell. Why I was able to sell so quickly is because the business was built to sell. It was ready to rock and roll. So I think invest the time and effort making sure it's right to sell. Reduce key person dependency is enormous as well. So I didn't just sell, but I was able to sell and exit on a walk-in, walk-out basis. So because I was able to demonstrate that it was a turnkey solution. I think having a competitive process for the sale as well, if you can engineer that as well, is create some competitive tension is important. But I think that if you've selling well and selling effectively is just a product of having a good business. So I think that beyond what I've said, I suppose, having a really excellent business is what's going to deliver you the best outcome. I think it's very difficult to have an extraordinary business that you can't sell, or to have a cruddy business that you sell from a mountain. They correlate. So getting the first one right and having a really good business and working hard at that is going to then directly relate to the outcome that you get.
All right, Michael, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Again, the people, so relationships. So if you've got two people, you've got one relationship to manage. If you've got three, you've got, what's that, six, I think, or two, three relationships, and on it goes, right? The more people, but when you add the 31st person, you've then got 30 separate relationships they all have with each individual person. So by far the hardest thing is people and managing them and trying to drive the business forward on the key drivers and the critical drivers and getting the results while still managing people. I think a lot of assets, a building, share portfolio and things, if you just leave it alone for long enough, invariably, as long as you widen out the time frame, it will deliver an increase in value. Business doesn't do that. So even just to get it to stay the same, you have to invest time and effort into it. If you do nothing to your business, it will go down. It's not going to appreciate. Just to get it staying on the level, there is always a natural attrition of staff, of customers. Any equipment you have will naturally erode, and any systems and things that you have will naturally become redundant too. So you just have to invest effort just to keep those up. So I'd say, yeah, people are the hardest of those four, but it's extraordinarily intensive to maintain, let alone grow a business.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
So I think E-Myth is a brilliant one. Built to Sell by John Morello that we touched on. I think the best one, I found the Checklist Manifesto to be an excellent one. That one was really, really good for me in terms of driving accountability and understanding why that works. Like, why is it that, and that looks at aircrafts, because if they have an error in a lot of businesses, if you have a mistake, you can kind of brush past it.
Yeah.
If you have an error in an aircraft, people die. So they have to get it right. So using that as a model is a really critical piece. And the best book on customer service is Unreasonable Hospitality, Yellow Book.
Amazing book. Yeah.
It is brilliant. So that to me span a whole lot of gears in my head. So we delivered a whole lot of interesting new projects to our patients and reinvented the way. How do we, in this mature industry, do something genuinely new and interesting? Yeah, so I was able to come up with those via that book as a direct inspiration.
Any great podcasts, online learning tools used for your own professional development?
How I Built This, I found that to be an excellent one. I think there's such commonality, right, in how difficult a business is to grow and run. And I think that hearing from the inventors or the business owners that started off some incredible businesses like household names, and you hear how challenging it is and was, it gives you heart to go, heck, you see the big names, say Airbnb, for instance, to throw one off there, or the ones from the female founders I actually found particularly impressive, like Rent the Runway or Spanx, Sarah Blakely. That is a sensational episode. Hearing her hustle and her challenges is phenomenal and mind-blowing. And now it's easy to go, she's a billionaire and all the rest. But she's got moxie and she worked her guts out, and seeing that and realizing, like, this is hard work. It's hard work if it's hard, if you're not successful. It's hard work if you are successful too. It's going to be hard either way. I found those stories incredibly inspirational to me to kind of keep on pushing through. So yeah, How I Built This.
Yep. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Books. Invest in yourself. Like, I know it's boring, but it works, right? So I think that getting a business, like, you can spend a lot of money on courses and all sorts of things, right? And I get that. But I think that when you think about what's a book, 25, 30 bucks, if you get the 10 best business books you can get, you're going to learn a mountain of information from those. So I think that would be the thing that I would say the best tool is. It's so easy to try and look for something sexy and go, oh, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. But like, just sitting down and reading really good stuff is mind-blowing and will take you so much further than any hot new gadget or thing.
Yep, totally agree. I do over 13 hours a week on 1.5 speed of professional development.
Yeah.
So a shitload of books. Yeah.
That's podcasts. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I only listened to books, it's worked out one over about 144 books a year that I get through. So it's like 3 a week. Yeah.
That's enormous. Yeah, look, I'm old school. I just get the paper ones and I sit there. My wife says, she goes, I can always tell when you're reading because I hear the highlighter lids pop on and off. So I sit there highlighting them all. So any one of those books, I can pick out any book I've read and flick through it. And you're going to see, and basically the more color you see in there, the better I thought it was, because you can see the more I've highlighted there. So yeah, I don't tend to use audiobooks. I do listen to podcasts, but for me, I do old school reading and I've got books scattered around the house, but yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out a bit over 10 years ago?
I was chatting to a friend about this question this morning, actually, a fellow business owner, different industry. He's got a trade services business who similar number of people. And I was saying what a good question it is. And I was saying, what would you say? And I think it's basically just hang on. Really, just hang on for the ride. Like, I'd
Yeah.
love to come up with something that's really cut through and you just go, wow, that's brilliant. But there's no one thing. I was thinking, what would I say to that guy? If I had 30 seconds of his time or 1 minute of his time, but there's no one pearl that I would be able to make me go faster through it. You've got to do your own push ups, right? You can't have someone else do them for you. I would just say, yeah, hang on for dear life and try and enjoy the ride. But yeah, hang on. Like, it gets bumpy at times. It's going to be up and down, but like, grab on and get ready for the ride of your life.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Mike. I really enjoyed our chat. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Did a 5-year dental degree at university, started as an employee dentist. After 10 years there in 2015, bought a small practice with 2 chairs, grew that to 10 chairs with low 20s full-time equivalents from the 4 when you bought the business. Sales compounded 18% per year. You transitioned from the billable work to none at all and just managing the business. Then sold the business last year in 2025 after growing it to the largest dental practice in Adelaide, a population of 1.4 million. So congratulations to you and the team. That is phenomenal.
Thank you so much, Troy. I really enjoyed being part of this. Really appreciate it.